Toronto Blue Jays are forced into an impossible decision as we are now less than 48 hours away from opening day. Some new reports and updates have dropped as it pertains to the Toronto Blue Jays home opener against the Baltimore Orioles. I'll write down exactly what that is and discuss what it means going forward, as it not only has big implications, but it forces John Schneider and Ross Atkins into a very difficult decision. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you guys for your continued support here. This is the place to be for Jays content, daily Jays content all season long. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, the season is about to start, and we are going to be in for a long season, but hopefully one that is going to be good, and all starts on Thursday. And we have a bunch of updates as it pertains to that game, and one storyline I want to focus on heading into the season is going to be surrounding George Springer and how the Jays opening day lineup shapes up here. And we got some insight. I want to start with a couple different things. We'll dive into that a little bit later, but I want to start with Shi Davidi, and he was on a radio show and he spoke out on who he believes will be the opening day center fielder for the Jays, but not only the opening day center fielder, but what everything looks like going forward as it pertains to the lineup and John Schneider's plans with platooning. He's going to guess that it's Nathan Lukes starting on Thursday in center field, but part of this will be matchup driven, and Alan Rodin's probably going to get some starts in center field too. Miles Straw will get the start when there's a lefty starter. So this actually reveals some pretty big information, because up until this point, we hadn't really heard much from John Schneider and from anybody about what the Jays' concrete plans are, especially while running three outfielders off of the bench, in theory, two outfielders, with, of course, two outfielders on the bench in a given night running, Nathan Lukes at starting center fielder spot between Rodin, Straw, and Lukes. So it seems that all signs are pointing with Zach Eflin, the righty on the mound, same opening day starter as last year, except this time instead of the Rays, it is, of course, the other team that, of course, Zach Eflin is on now in the Orioles. It's going to be Nathan Lukes starting center field. So the decision now that the Jays have to make, and one we'll dive into, is essentially George Springer has been very poor this spring. And obviously it's going to depend a lot on how he does come both opening day, but for the first 30 to 60 games. But the Jays, every single game now, are going to have to make an impossible decision as it pertains to Alan Rodin as well, because let's assume that Nathan Lukes gets to start in center field. You start to look at a bunch of the projections and all these different things, and things start to get very interesting. And MLB.com dropped their opening day starting lineup projection, and it really made me think about how many tough decisions the Toronto Blue Jays front office and John Schneider specifically are going to have to make. And it all focuses around really the DH spot and George Springer's performance. You can see this here. The opening day projected lineup is Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Anthony Santander, George Springer, Andres Gimenez, Alejandro Kirk, Will Wagner, Ernie Clement, and Nathan Lukes. Now, I'll preface this by saying I have the exact same top six. I think the top six there is pretty solidified. We know Bichette's probably going to be leading off come opening day, and we also know that Andres Gimenez is going to hit ahead of Alejandro Kirk. Ben Nicholson-Smith came out and said it essentially because they don't want Alejandro Kirk clogging up the base pass for your best base stealer in Andres Gimenez. Now, with that being said, of course, you see it here now. This has Will Wagner starting opening day instead of Alan Rodin, and it doesn't have Anthony Santander DH. It actually has him at right field and Springer in left field. And the question I want to ask you guys is, A, who you think the opening day starting lineup is going to be, but B, I think if you're going to, they're probably going to run Will Wagner. Keegan, or whoever made this MLB.com article, probably Keegan Matheson, but whoever made it is probably right, because Will Wagner has shown a little bit at the MLB level already, and if they want to reward him for that and his past experience, having him start opening day instead of Alan Rodin makes sense. But at the same time, you cut some, we made some interesting and tough decisions in order to get Alan Rodin on this team, so to have him not an opening day is a little bit rough. Now, I think there is a chance that they have Anthony Santander probably run DH instead of Will Wagner, and then of course you have Alan Rodin playing, let's say, left field with Springer playing right field, or whatever it ends up being, because Rodin is a better defender than Anthony Santander at this point of their careers, because that would then open up a lot of space. But it really got me thinking about how tough of a decision the Jays, brass is going to have, and specifically John Schneider is going to have here. Because then you look at Fangraph's projected opening day lineup, and it's very similar, but they have Andres Gimenez in the 4th spot, you have Springer in the 6th spot. But regardless of that, I think the top 6, whether or not you move them around, is pretty solidified here. It's the bottom 3, and Ernie Clement and Nathan Lukes. Lukes is probably going to get the start, but Alan Rodin there at left field with Anthony Santander DH, I think that is your best offensive chance. And that's not to take anything away from Will Wagner. We know the team loves Will Wagner. Him and Alan Rodin have very similar projected WRC pluses. Rodin has a point or 1 point more, 118 versus 117. So it's at the point now where I think not only is this team going to have to make decisions every single day based on matchups, But even in days where you're going up against a lefty, Shadavidi came out and revealed that it's going to be Miles Straw going up against the left-handed pitchers, which means the first lefty that the Jays go up against, we're going to see Miles Straw in center field, which pushes Nathan Lucas out. And then depending on how things go, you're probably not going to run Alan Roden necessarily against lefties, but you could. And then it still comes down to George Springer, because if George Springer starts to really struggle, you need to now then find a way to get both Alan Roden and Will Wagner, assuming they're hitting well, and even Davis Schneider in every single game. And games where Miles Straw is starting center field, you also have Davis Schneider who's going to factor in against the lefties. So it is going to be a wild, wild ride. And at the end of the day, the Jays have a bunch of impossible decisions to make here, because you're either leaving out Alan Roden or Will Wagner on a given night. Depending on how they play, it's going to be very, very interesting. A couple other notes as well here quickly regarding their bullpen and things like that. We know Jeff Hoffman's a closer. You have Chad Green, Jimmy Garcia, Nick Sandlin, and then of course once Swanson and Dylan Tate get ramped up, they'll be in there. But Max Scherzer is going to be starting on Saturday, according to Arden Zwelling. So he's going to be starting the third game of the series with Chris Bassett being pushed down to the fourth starting spot, and then of course Bowden Francis being pushed to the fifth starting spot. And as it pertains to specifically opening day, their explanation for this was that Joey Loperfido had a shot to win some reps at center, but he was optioned on March 21st, which leaves the door open for someone like Lucas. Wagner could mix in at multiple positions, and Alan Roden made a fantastic impression. The top six of the Jays lineup feels fairly set now. And I tend to agree. I also think there's a world where at some point in the season, either Alan Roden or Will Wagner will be leading off for this team against right-handed pitchers, and then that you moves Bo Bichette down into the cleanup role, and then it pushes everybody down. But I think to start, you don't want to put a ton of pressure on either of the young guys. Will Wagner is a natural fit, a great on-base percentage, a great contact, doesn't strike out very much, a fantastic eye. Exactly the type of player the Jays want at leadoff. But again, he's still very much so a rookie, even though he played last year. He's going to be a guy who's going to really have to not only earn his spot, which he already earned his spot, but earn a spot in the everyday lineup. You got to continue to come out and show what he can do, building off of a 768, I believe it was, OPS last year or whatever it was. So it's going to be interesting there. And as you look at the opening day lineup for the Baltimore Orioles, the projected opening day lineup, they have some thump in there. You have Colton Cowser, Adley Rushman, Jordan Westberg, Ryan O'Hearn, Tyler O'Neill, new addition, Ryan Mountcastle, Cedric Mullins, Ramon Urias, and Jackson Holiday. So not, no Gunnar Henderson there. So Jackson Holiday is getting the start at short to start the season. It's going to be interesting. It's not quite as scary as, it once was necessarily, but Ryan Mountcastle mashes against the Jays. Tyler O'Neill is a masher. Ryan O'Hearn is a masher. Jordan Westberg, prospect masher. Like, they're very good, but there's still a lot of question marks there. And specifically for the Orioles, their pitching staff is going to be a big question mark coming into the season with Corbin Burns being let go, and now, of course, Zach Eflin starting. So the Jays, it's going to be a big game for the Toronto Blue Jays, and hopefully they can come out and get the win, because Vladdy does have a fantastic track record against Zach Eflin, 7-19 with 2 home runs and 4 RBIs. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on the impossible decision. At the end of the day, you can see here from Joe Siddall, Alan Roden's going to be the guy that is going to exceed expectations according to many fans, and hopefully he gets the opening nod on Thursday.